Welcome back, one and all, to the poorly lit, slightly off-centre table, where I have realised something horrifying. I, as a huge Thwackbot fan in my life, have only built one Thwackbot, and today that is going to change. And it is going to change to the lowest possible standard. So, full disclosure, this has been largely inspired by a conversation I was having with Jevon from World of Woodrow as he was going round various shops trying to find some random bits for a build of his. And I thought, you know what? That looks like fun. So I went to my local pound shop, because I live in Stevenage, it's all pound shops, and bought some stuff that I thought I could turn into robots. Now, obviously, none of the internals came from there. I went in, spent about a £5 just on materials, basically. So here is my little haul. Wow, autofocus hated that. I think I could get a few robots out of this. So let's start with the most obvious thing. This horrible little pan that they seem to genuinely believe people might cook in. That might turn into something vaguely ant-weight shaped. That's not going to happen for ages, but there it is. Now you know. This is going to come up later. There were two of these. Where's the other one gone? Oh, it's there. This is the one I'm actually planning to use today. We'll get to that. Wow. Great conversation, Ryan. Thanks so much. The main materials I got are really these three things. So I decided I might want to play with some thin metal at some point. I assume this is aluminium, because it is quite light. But this whole thing is about 200 grams. So I think with a reasonably compact amount of it, I could potentially get a kind of hand-bent ant out of this. So that's the plan there. Then, of course, the classic chopping board. Polypropylene, probably. Oh, come on. Focus, you. Well, you're living with that now, aren't you? That's fine. Clearly, the colour was just so offensive that it wouldn't go for it. As you can see, I have already cut part out of this. That's going to come up later. About 3mm thick, maybe. Probably polypropylene. Probably quite prone to shattering. Cuts absolutely horribly, but nice cheap source of material that I've already made some use of. And then finally, part I'm regretting most right now, this washing up bowl. Now this is some nice thin plastic that I know I can hand bend really easily. And I thought that this area would be enough to get something out of. Spoiler alert, I've learned that's not the case. But for today, I'm going to be working with this. I'm going to be working with the little bit of the chopping board I've already cut out. And of course, the brush. That's all for later though. Let's have a quick look at electronics. This is your classic BodgeBot setup. I've not worked with this stuff before. And oh boy, do these motors sound unhappy. Really simple. Receiver, speed controller, battery, switch, motors. This is what I love about Thwackbots. Simplest possible internals. So far, as you can see, I've already done quite a lot of the work. This isn't going to be a sort of whole build-in-one kind of video. You've had enough of that. So I've got this all soldered up. That went extremely well, and there were no problems whatsoever. I've also prototyped out a body plan. So this is just in card at the moment. My plan is, the thing I always find tricky with any build is finding a way to retain a top panel. That's just my nemesis all the time. So the idea here is that motors go in like this. There's just enough at the top there to cover the terminals. And everything kind of folds over. And then you've got a lot of area here that I can find some way to secure down. All of the stuff does fit inside. There might be some wire shortening involved, but it should all sort of tuck in quite nicely. And then the actual Thwackbot arm part will be the slightly cut down version of this. So nice big thwacky thing. So what I need to do... Oh, there's one other part actually. Which is, I decided, because it's quite flimsy plastic, it might need a slightly sturdier base. So there's a really well cut bit of polypropylene, which kind of sits under here. This will be what the motors are actually mounted to, and what this is mounted to. That's all the plan I have. The first step I really need to do is take this and try and make it out of the washing up bowl plastic. Get out of shot, you. Try and make it out of that. I can't really fit it on the flat bit, so I'm going to have to do it out of curved bits, and it's probably going to be a horrible experience. But I will bring you back when that is done. Ooh, transition. Transition, there we go. So we're back with a mix of good and bad news. Good news, the plastic cuts really well. Bad news, it doesn't bend so well. It's perfectly doable by hand. Not a particularly painful process, but what I didn't account for and should have is that it does have a sort of non-zero bend radius. Here's a little test piece. I planned this so that it was a panel of the correct size, a panel of the correct size, and a pencil line between them. I should really have been accounting a small amount for the material that's kind of lost to creating this bend. When I prototyped it in cardboard, it was pretty much fine. These are, I never remember which side the lens is on here. It's pretty much a 90-degree bend. There's a little bit of curve to it, but it's small enough that it doesn't really stack up over the whole thing. With this, however, it did. So, fortunately, I actually designed this to be a bit longer because I wanted more flap here in the hope that it would be able to come over and right onto the back so that I could screw through to the thicker bit of polypropylene to mount it. So that was the plan. That meant I had a lot extra. By the time I got to here, I realised that this part was only going to be about 20mm. It wouldn't have fit, so I had to just space everything out a bit more, which means I have enough for it to come together. Everything will still work, but I don't have as much overlap as I wanted. That just means I'm going to need to come up with a very slightly different system for retaining this top. What I'm thinking is maybe some other little bits of bent polypropylene, or I also have some nylon corner blocks that I can use a couple of just on here that this will bolt straight through. Might actually be a more elegant solution than I had previously. So my next steps, really, and I'm going to do these all in one big go, getting this glued up. So these sides and the tabs need to go together. I will also get the polypropylene base plate glued in. I'm going to super glue these rather than hot glue them for once, which feels right and proper. I'm going to get those together, and then I'm going to think about how much brush I want. So at the moment, I'm thinking probably about that much stick out is probably good. Which means I'll probably trim it more like here, just because I want to make sure I've got room down here for the electronics and things. Everything's going to fit anyway, but the more room I have for those things to sort of weave around, it's the wiring that's really the big issue. The more room I have for that, the better. I also need to think about a switch placement. I might cut a little bit out of here and just do the switch right next to the arm. I think that's a nice protected location. Other thing I forgot to mention in the first part of this is that I do plan for this to be a viable bodgebot. It's well within budget, it should be well within rate. If I'm really lucky, it will be within half weight, and I can build two, because clusters are always better. So that's the plan. Lots of gluing to do, lots of clamping, probably lots of waiting as well for that to properly dry off. So what can I transition with? I need something to transition with. I know the pan will do. Here's a transition. And here we are. Now, you may not like it, but this is what peak performance looks like. Worryingly, this is structurally the best stupid thing I've built so far, because it is all actually bolted together rather than glued. That wasn't by choice. This polypropylene just doesn't like glue very much. So these corners, which were intended to just be glued together, they've got a little bolt running through them. Have I got them at all even? No, I haven't. Did I care? Absolutely not. And we've then got the thicker sort of structural part, which is attached in 4 places, 2 of those also retaining the brush. So let's have a little look at internal layout. I could really do, well, I could do with planning these things ahead first. I could really do with something to prop this up on, but as always, it is the thing holding my camera. So, roll of tape will do. Is it going to overbalance? Yes, it is. Second roll of something else. No. Oh, hang on, maybe. Very careful. Don't knock anything. I'm warning you. So if we get our big bundle of electronics in, motor mounting is easy. They sit in basically, this is going terribly, isn't it? They sit in the only place they can. Just realise that those bolts completely interfere with that. That's going to be a lot of fun to deal with, but That's fine. Maybe there's going to be a little bit of camber. Maybe a little bit of camber will look good. The issue from there, first of all, in the short term, it's getting... Let's just put it down. There we go. Tape's get out of the way. The issue from there is just getting everything packed inside. Now, luckily, this sits a lot lower down than I imagined. So it's not going to be a big issue putting wires sort of over the top of it. So in a sense, everything can just kind of pack down willy-nilly. This, I think I'm going to have to shorten, which is a shame. But it is really going to be a question of getting everything in here and just making sure it stays clear of these. Because these parts, I don't know how well you can see this. This is all one output. So this is spinning and stuff needs to stay fairly clear of it. So yeah, I think it's just going to be a question of gluing the motors down because there's no other way of mounting them. And then getting everything else... I'm kind of liking that sitting there. It's just kind of settled there, but I do quite like that. I'll consider that as a long-term option. Yeah, just a question of getting it all packed and glued, really. So hopefully the next thing you see will be it driving. Maybe. Or maybe I'll show you how I end up doing this. We'll see how time goes. This has been quite a long build so far. I need a transition object. Quick, quick, quick. Drill will do. Transition. Overexposed. If there's one thing I know for sure, well, there are two things I know for sure. One, I shouldn't have used this board again because focusing, there we go. You got me. First thing, I should not use this board. The second thing I know for sure, the more important thing I know for sure, is that you are not ready for this. It lives. Oh, there are so many problems with this. First of all, both wheels, I had to go with the camber. I did cover the bolts in some hot glue to insulate them so everything is safe, but I still wanted to have some clearance. There is some camber, which has led to both wheels rubbing, which is super fun, and very difficult to get in and fix because the motors are now glued down. So I might need to sort of get in and kind of pop the wheels off. Problem is, when you do that, they kind of take the hubs with them. And I'm worried that if I essentially pull the whole output shaft off, I'm going to need to find a way to fit a new motor, and that's not something I want. So that was one issue. Second of all, I put all the electronics in. I'd love to show you how they are, but getting it all together is too much of a pain to do on camera. You've got the battery down here, you've got the receiver and speed controller there, and a lot of wiring. I didn't cut it down in the end. But I did all of that before I thought about how I was going to secure the top down. Which meant that to do that with the blocks I was thinking of using, they would have needed to be bolted onto here, which would have meant drilling through and bolting, and all the electronics were in. I just decided against it. So you can see my solution is far from ideal, but it is an extra strip of plastic, which kind of goes around onto this extra bit that I'd handily just left, and then kind of holds things sprung together. The issue is that that's good at holding in the middle, but not at the corners. The corners is where it really needs it, but this is already a very bodgy bodgebot. I feel like it can survive that. I haven't tested it yet. We're going to do that together, but we can't do that in here. So we will now jump cut to somewhere else. Alright, expectations are as low as they can be. Fairly certain this won't thwack because the weight balance is completely off and it's got absolutely no grip. And the controls are off by 90 degrees. So... let's see how that goes. It's controllable at the very least. Let's line up for a big thwack. Yeah, no, absolutely no chance. Barely even any lift on the rear. I didn't think these motors would do it. I should have designed much wider. But with the size wheel I've got, even then I could only really keep the weight mostly in line with the axles, and that's not really enough. I'll tell you what, you can get yourself out of some tight spots fairly well. I would try it the other way up, but I know the sound is going to be horrible. So there we are. I think that's mission failed successfully, let's say. I'm conflicted. This looks exactly how I wanted it to. the construction of it, I'm kind of pleased with, in a stupid way. The internal pack, you know, this is a good chance to show off the internals. I'm quite pleased with how the internals ended up packing together. Just, this isn't the most convenient setup in the world. I used the longest bolts I could, just so there was minimal chance of the nuts vibrating off while it was working. I wish I'd done that for the switch as well, because that's come loose. But that's not a big deal. I mean, on a proper robot it would be a big deal, but not on this. Come on, you can do it. This is riveting content, I'm so sorry. Well, maybe that can't come off. Yeah, the internal packing is pretty good, but all of the weight is up here. I knew that would be an issue. There just wasn't another way to do it with the body that I'd built. I think it's funny. It's something that will get a laugh out of some people who I want to give a laugh with it. But at the same time, I was really looking forward to driving a Thwackbot today. And that's not what I've given myself. I could try. I haven't actually weighed this yet. Let's knock everything over while getting the scales and see what this is weighing in at. Because I do wonder if there's potential to add ballast. I think it would have to be a lot of ballast. But I think there is potential to add ballast to the front. See, this is 200 grams. This is... Or is it 200 grams or is that just off the edge? Okay, 243. I can do numbers. So it's within the cluster that I potentially wanted. But that is also, you know, almost half the weight that I could somehow try and strap along here. I don't think it would be easy. I don't think I could actually pack that much weight into that space. But maybe that is a way that this can be modified to really do what I want. And maybe that's something I'll play with. For now, this has taken far more of my day than I ever planned. And I'm frankly going to take a break from it. But maybe I will come back to this at some point and just see what can be done to it. But for now, that is the robot, the name of which I haven't discussed yet. I'm thinking, well, I was thinking Get Good Scrub. Because, you know, a little homage to a terribly named BattleBots competitor. You know who you are. But I don't know. Maybe it's not good enough to be called that. But anyway, it's a fun build. First proper BotchBot style build as well with the recommended stuff. They sound like this, but they seem to run quite well, so I'm pretty happy with those. Yeah, it's a robot. That's better than nothing. Now, I'm not definitely saying this is the answer, but at the same time, we won't know until we try, eh? It's done a lot for the weight balance. Let's see if it's done enough for the weight balance. It's done nothing for the speed, that's for sure. Oh, it's close! With a good enough run-up, maybe. Except my driving is currently terrible. Oh, it's so near! So near! Come on. With the tailwind and everything, it just might do it. Ah! Trying to do it in shot is also tricky. Right, I'm going to give it one big run up. If it doesn't make it, then at least we'll know we made a difference. Oh, it's just not quite there. It wants to. It really wants to. It just can't. Ballast might work though. This is promising. I'm typically not the confident type, but maybe it's enough? Let's find out. Let's get ourselves a good run up. Yes! Yes! Oh! Why is it that a stupid solution just makes success feel so much better? It won't even do it again. That's the bit. There it is. But if that isn't... It's the only way I can end this. I'm glad. It's perfect. I'm done. It's finished. It's just going to stay like that forever now.